we can like take the time to take a step back and think through, you know, what we want to communicate and why and who our audience is. So I know it's very CitSci heavy in the room, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We are trying to do a lot more science communication and we can always do more. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So hello, online friends. Hello to Eliza and Susie and the CitSci team in person. We're so happy you're all here. My name is Caroline. I wanted to start off with a little bit about me because I think the purpose of today's talk is, number one, it's about you. We want to make sure that we're helping you brainstorm about the science communication that you want to do and take that necessary step back. But I want to share some of my experiences and how I approach science communication. There's no right or wrong way to do science communication. I'm just sharing what has worked for me with different roles. So I guess like for our disclosure, so I just wrapped up a PhD at the University of Florida in climate change communication. So I was actually in the extension department at my school. So I'm definitely a Gator. You can, for those in the room in person, you can see my Gator pin. Love the Gator Nation. I was asking Sarah earlier, I was like, is there like a term for the Rams? Like, do we call ourselves the Ramley? Like, the Ram Nation? I don't know. I know different schools have different preferences for that. I also have a background in citizen science, so I have some definitions in here because I know I never want to assume like that we all mean the same thing by the same term. So I wanted to start with some definitions. So I'll get to what citizen science is in a second, but I'm so honored to work with CitSci as the communications lead. I've also done quite a bit of work with the Human Computation Institute. They do a lot of like Alzheimer's research and biomedical citizen science, especially gamified biomedical citizen science. So think playing a video game to help Alzheimer's researchers and classify data while you play, that kind of thing. I've also worked extensively with SciStarter. I have some examples from SciStarter in this presentation. They're one of the world's biggest participatory science databases. So they are a great hub for people all around the world who want to find real science they can do. I also have a background in social enterprises and systems change with UF psychiatry, so the med school at the University of Florida. I have some examples from that in here, as well as Rally, which is the city of Orlando and Orange County's social enterprise accelerator. I've been one of their fellows, and the Central Florida Foundation. I've done a lot of work on how to incentivize a better Central Florida. I'm also a civic technologist and educator with a nonprofit I started, Florida Community Innovation. So I'll share some examples from that. The idea of leveraging technology and involving the community to build technology with you to solve different social problems or address different issues that we see. So what should you expect from today? Well, we'll start off with some definitions. We'll have lots of discussion. So I know sometimes when people are like, oh, this is going to be interactive, I feel a feeling of dread. So I hope you all don't feel that. I know some people don't like to talk. So we also have these worksheets. The online people should have access to that as well. So you can think through what your goals with science communication might be as we go. So you can say them out loud or you can also write them down. We have a lot of that discussion, two-way communication in today's presentation. I'll share some examples of some of the science communication work I've done in case that helps invigorate anything for you. But we also want to provide a framework for action so we can learn from each other with some of your science communication goals. So I promised definitions. I want to start off with thinking about what is research, right? So it's a systematic way of investigating the world to create new knowledge. And research isn't just limited to the natural sciences, right? You can do historical research. You can do research. You can create new knowledge about anything in this world. And I think that's a whole different talk. I've thought a lot about the methods of participatory science for things like history, but I think research broadly is just a way of creating new knowledge about the world. And why do you do it? You do research because you're curious or concerned about something, because you want to understand a problem or a topic, because you want a foundation built on knowledge to make decisions. And I wanted to start off with a definition of citizen science because I'll be saying it a lot during this talk for different examples that we have. So I figured let's start there. It goes by a few different names, and there are good faith debates about what name should be used for what subset. But basically, citizen, community, neighborhood, participatory science, it's how a member of the public, and the public is anybody and everybody, right, contributes to scientific discovery, often by collecting, analyzing, or somehow working with data. And data is just information. Data can be words and pictures. That's qualitative data. It can be numbers and measurements. That's quantitative data. But basically, citizen science is how anybody can be part of the scientific enterprise in a meaningful way. And you all already know what CitSci is, but I wanted to disclose that too, because that's why I'm here, because I have the privilege of working with CitSci, app and website, a platform where anyone can start, manage, or join citizen science projects, built for collaborative data collection, community engagement, impactful research, especially powerful in my experience for educators who want to customize projects or work with local scientists to create data forms. I've been doing that a lot in Florida, my home state, so it's been fun to use CitSci in that context. And it's also easy to analyze data from other projects. I've been seeing more and more learners do that with the CitSci platform. Okay, so let's get to the science communication piece, now that we have our definitions. I like this definition from the National Environmental Education Facility. Science communication involves distilling the technical aspects of scientific research into language that the public can better relate to and understand. What does that mean? It's a little wordy. Another way to say it is science communication is communicating about science to the public. And once again, the public is anybody and everybody, all of us. So why would we even want to do this? Why would we communicate about science? I'm curious what you all think. This is the interactive piece. And online people, you feel free to share in the chat. Why communicate about science? Greg, you look like you have ideas.
Translational research. So like making sure science translates into decision making, say whether government officials, state municipalities, that lots of times there's a desire to have science inform those decisions. So without communication, it might not.
Yeah, I think science helps us make better choices. Yeah, Sarah? Oh, yes. So Greg was saying science communication is valuable for translational research. So being able to use science to inform policy decision making for example, your local city. 100%. I was thinking about it. Why would we communicate science? So here are some of my ideas. I think the natural curiosity piece is a great reason to communicate about science. I put a picture of space here, but I've been working in the citizen science space for about 10 years now, and I found that a lot of what motivates people is they just want to feel part of something bigger than themselves. And there's a sense of wonder that a lot of us have about the world around us. And I think when you communicate about science, or when you give citizen science opportunities to people, it can help them be part of that. There's also the decision-making piece. So we all know what this is, COVID-19. Communicating about science helps us respond to, for example, public health emergencies or climate change. So there's the almost self-interested piece of communicating about science so we can have a shared human future. But you might also want to communicate about science and technology to respond to things that are shaping the way we live and work, right? Like the advent of new AI technologies. Or also, one thing I've been thinking about a lot, especially in the context of a land-grant university, communicating about science helps us participate in our democracy. I think it's an integral part of our democratic society. Think about the founding fathers, right? They were great scientists, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, iconic scientists. I think we should think of science as part of our national DNA, and understanding science and communicating about it, I think, is a huge part of being a good citizen. So in science communication, there are two models that the literature talks about. I had this in my dissertation. There's the deficit model of science communication, where the scientist is the expert and the genius and the person working alone, and they communicate the science to the society, who should be so delighted to receive this great knowledge. And there's a time and place for the deficit model, I think. Like there are times when someone has a really novel breakthrough and they just need to share it out. But the model I subscribe to more so, and I think is probably more valuable for the type of work all of us want to do, is the dialogue model. So the idea that there's two-way communication instead of one way, that the expert is in conversation with society who are contributing to the social intelligence. So the priorities of the public inform what the scientist is working on. And then the government, like Greg was saying, uses that to make better decisions. And it also is in dialogue with trade and industry, which changes the way that we live. So ideally, we're all learning from each other and working together. And that's the model of science communication, the dialogue model that's probably most useful for us today. However, there's a bit of a disconnect between scientists and the public that I think can make this dialogue model a little bit more difficult to pursue. So this is from Pew Research Center, one of our great hubs of survey research out there. Scientists are seen as intelligent, but fewer than half of them are viewed as good communicators by the public. So you can see 89% of respondents, US adults, thought of scientists as intelligent, 71% thought they were skilled at working in teams. 65% thought they were focused on solving real world problems. But then you start to see, just under half of the public think scientists are socially awkward, superior. They think scientists think they're better than them. They don't think of scientists as good communicators. Only 45% of respondents think that, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of negative views of scientists out there. Even though there are some positive ones, they think they're intelligent. They don't necessarily think of them as people they can talk to, right? The public and scientists are not in dialogue. And here's a smattering of news headlines that I found on this topic. So from Pew Research Center, Americans' trust in scientists, positive views of science continue to decline. Why MAGA hates science so much. This was in Slate. 2024, the year of distrust in science. And then, of course, from one of my favorite news outlets, The Guardian, public trust in science has been eroded from COVID-19 to climate. But I also wanted to share, this is a quotation that I always really love and gives me a lot of energy when we're trying to address these problems. If you don't like the news, go out and make some of your own. So all of us here, whether we're actively doing science, are working as scientists, are working as citizen scientists, to be quite frank, we can still communicate about science. We can still learn about science and educate others. So if you don't like the news, go out and make some of your own. So I know we have a lot of scientists in the room, are people who work in the citizen science, participatory science spaces. So I'm curious, or even if you are just a collaborator, like, what do you think you can gain from science communication for everybody who's either watching online or here in person? Like, what's the benefit for you? I mean, I think we talked about why it matters for the public, right? Because so we can have good crisis information, or entertain or educate people, or capture their curiosity. But as scientists, what's your benefit?
I mean, I think a lot of times we come up with more interesting questions when we
Yes.
and therefore the science becomes more interesting.
Yeah.
So I selfishly love that piece of it.
Yeah. 100%. And there are no wrong answers. Oh, did someone say something in the chat? Oh, they're typing. Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
I don't know if we have that ability. Let's see.
Okay.
Stand by, everybody. We're figuring out Teams.
Hi, I'm Ashmita.
Yes.
I work as a GRA in Human Lab. So, Caroline, I want to say this because I have faced this in my academic career so far. Is that so? Back in India, also, I used to work in different labs and have got publications. But what I've felt is that no matter how great a scientist you are, it's important to describe what you are doing to the common people, because if you are just restricting your audience to the just the experts, I don't think the science will go to far extent. So science communication is very important. And also I have also felt this, that when some people who maybe are great scientists but they are not good science communicator, so for making a kind of science accessible to everybody, you should present what you are doing in a very lucid language to the general audience. That's where the beauty of science communication actually lies. Maybe somebody is doing cancer biology, molecular cancer biology. So don't take me otherwise, but I have had this experience that most of the scientists are very snobbish, and they say that, okay, we do not need to tell this to the general public. We should only restrict our communication within a specific group. But the thing is that you're trying to make a vaccine for the general public only. So you should be good in science communication as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely true. And one thing I was thinking about, and I put this on the worksheet, if you as a scientist don't feel like you're a good communicator, then get an ally, like someone who can help you. Get another member of your team. Exactly, yes. We can team up and we can work, you can work on these things with others. Like it doesn't have to be incumbent on you to craft the perfect soundbite. You have other folks at your institution or in your community who probably would be on your side and help you. Like librarians, library staff members I've seen them work to great impact with scientists to help them communicate about what they're doing. So on the topic of, and thank you so much for sharing with us. I think that's so true about like the need for clarity. What I think people can gain from science communication, just some of the ideas that came to my head, new ideas, like Sarah said, different research questions that you get from communicating with the quote unquote public. You can also find volunteer communities who want to help you. This is a picture from CitSci's website of people doing participatory science. Often funding, right? We're in a whole new world. I've been talking a lot with scientist friends who are really worried about the new funding landscape. I think crowdfunding is increasingly going to be a great model for science, and science communication can help increase your funding. But also, you can make new friends. Not everything necessarily needs to be transactional, right? Or it doesn't necessarily have to have an immediate call to action. You don't have to say, volunteer for my project on this day, or, give me this new research question or your input. You can just build relationships over time by sharing what you're excited about and the type of science that you've been doing. So this is where the worksheet comes in. As you're thinking through your place in the science communication ecosystem, there are a few steps that have worked for me that I think might work for you as well. I think step one is know thyself, right? So what type of science are you working on? What is your place in this ecosystem? So I know this is the first project I worked on in the science communication space. I started this as an undergraduate and actually still volunteer with them at the University of Florida Psychiatry Department. One of our psychiatrists tragically passed away he was hit by a car while he was jogging, and he was a world-renowned expert in street psychiatry. So he would work with homeless individuals. He would go under bridges and provide psychiatric care. And he also wrote prolifically and published about his work, and I think was just a great researcher and a great practitioner. And they brought me on board to package his articles together to turn them into a textbook and turn them into a curriculum for psychiatry residents worldwide. So I thought about my place in this. It's like I'm more in the communication side. I'm meant to package this together in a way that makes sense to other practitioners, to take his body of research, his body of work, his frameworks, and turn it into a textbook and curriculum project. I was like, what's the unique thing I can do? What is my place in the scientific endeavor? And what I did was I met with many of his homeless patients, and we did an art project together, and we were able to embed their art throughout the textbook, and we were able to provide that human side. So different people who had received different treatments, we were able to interview them and talk about the impact on them. So even though I'm not a physician and I wasn't as a researcher like Dr. Christensen was, we were able to put together a really interesting product that I think had a real impact on people. So as you're thinking about what type of science you're working on or your place in the scientific process, that I think is the first step in science communication and communicating about research generally. Step two, know your audience. So who are your stakeholders? What audiences are you hoping to reach? So I had an example from SciStarter. That's that citizen science organization I mentioned earlier. During COVID, during the advent of COVID, April 2020, SciStarter was starting this initiative called Citizen Science Month. So it was meant to be global. We had participants signed up on every continent, including Antarctica, and we had all these in-person events planned. And obviously, we had to transition really quickly. And as the director of Citizen Science Month at that time, I thought about our audiences. We kind of had two. We had the audience of facilitators, so people who were trying to get other folks involved in citizen science. And then we had the audience of the general public. And for both audiences, because we knew we knew them, we did the customer discovery process. We did some quick interviews to figure out what people needed. We were able to give the facilitators online resources so they could engage people in the virtual environment. And then we were able to create more opportunities for that general public. And it worked. We saw a 480% increase in contributions to projects in April 2020 compared to April 2019. And a theme from the evaluation for both facilitators and for the general public was that they felt part of something bigger than themselves. So as the world was falling down around them, they sought out these opportunities to make an impact. So I think the reason this instance of science communication and engagement was successful was because we knew our audience, we knew who our stakeholders were. Step 3, know your message. What is your goal? What is your why? Always take that step back and think about, why am I doing this? So I was thinking through some of the reasons people engage in science communication. I mean, one big reason is they're sharing a participatory science call to action, right? Sarah and I do this all the time. We say, participate in the Leave No Trash project. Take a picture of trash you see, clean it up. That's great data for sustainability research. So participatory science calls to action, great reason to do science communication. You want to message that out to people. But you might also be seeking stakeholder feedback. When I was at University of Florida, I was part of an agriculture project for Internet of Things. So we were trying to give farmers tools, tech tools to make their agriculture more efficient. And before we even wanted to build the things, we wanted to get their feedback. So we did a number of listening sessions with the farmers to understand where they're at with technology and what are they currently using and what would they be comfortable, changing, like what does their day-to-day look like, so we can be as responsive as possible to what they want. So stakeholder feedback at any stage of the process, from before you start a project to as you formulate your research questions to as you start to build things, stakeholder feedback is huge. You might be looking for recognition because of a novel research result. I think that's valid too. Maybe you discover something really, really interesting about microbes and climate change, and you think everyone should know it just because it is a game changer for your field, but also might invigorate their imaginations with this whole, human endeavor of scientific discovery. You might just be looking for that. And maybe you hit up the big news stations or you try to put together a viral social media campaign. That's a perfectly valid reason to do science communication. And there might be other reasons. So I wanted to pause here again for feedback from our virtual and in-person audience. Are there any other reasons that you want to engage in science communication? It's okay if you don't know up front. I know it's a big question and it's an evolving process. There's no pressure to have all the answers right now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important with this communication and especially this listening to your stakeholders, because, for instance, with our grasscast and things like this, farmers and ranchers don't talk about climate.
Yeah.
They talk about weather.
Yep.
You talk about climate change, they're like, they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But they'll talk about the weather all day long.
Yeah.
So it's also, you have to learn how to communicate on terms of how your stakeholders communicate.
100%. Well, yeah, it's almost learning. So to summarize for our people online, Susie was talking about the importance of learning how your stakeholders talk about different issues. So farmers and ranchers maybe don't talk about climate change, but they'll talk about the weather. I think that's huge. I think it's also the relationship piece, right? So if you start to get that stakeholder feedback and build that trust over time, I actually have an example on this slide of a project that I do with the nonprofit I run as a volunteer, Florida Community Innovation. We do stakeholder feedback constantly for our flagship project, which is a resource map. So we're trying to connect social and community workers to food, shelter, and more, just giving them a system to find and manage information. And because we do that stakeholder feedback constantly, we've learned their language. So we've learned how they talk and what terms are comfortable for them. But we've also learned we've built up a trust where if we do things that they don't think is necessarily a good idea, we can explain it. So one example is, so Sharon and Henrietta, they're in the picture here. I have a quote from Henrietta on there. But there are two community workers in the Paramore neighborhood of Orlando, which is a very underserved neighborhood. And because we've built trust and we have real relationships with them, they'll suggest things for the resource map and we can either accept or reject it. So Henrietta was like, I think this should be an app. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I think that's a bad idea because we have looked at the literature and apps tend to fail. So it's better for this just to be a website. Brandon's laughing, but because we built that trust, we're able to engage in that real dialogue with our social and community workers. And it starts to be a shared project rather than a one-way thing. And learning the terms that they're comfortable with, like they have so much lingo in the social work world. Now we can actually communicate with them and build things that they want. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so there's not the echo. Well, so Sarah was just summarizing some of what was in the chat for our friends who are online. She was reading it out to our friends in person. But no, that's so true. I think the thing about science communication for everybody here is it's a muscle you build with practice. So as we mentioned earlier, you don't have to do it alone. Find an ally who can help you. I'm here to help. We can all stay in dialogue after today's event. And I'm always happy to think through different campaigns you're working on, or different messages that you want to send out into the world, or different dialogues that you want to start. But also just start doing it. One of the best communicators I know, I should have put her in this presentation actually, is Alison Cusick. She's a NASA scientist. She does citizen science on phytoplankton. And she just started going live on Instagram one day and talked about her projects and just kept it up. So I think just starting to talk and then keeping that up and practicing and seeing how people respond to it and then editing it based on their feedback and remaining in that dialogue, that two-way communication, that's how you become a better science communicator. Well, and speaking of just doing it, step 4, devise your plan. I tried to follow along with the worksheet kind of with this presentation, but think about how you will communicate. Are you going to do in-person meetings with people? Are you going to be active on online forums? Are there email listservs that you have access to? Are you going to be a social media master out there on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Blue Sky? That's a whole nother thing. Do you want to access traditional press and media? And also, who can help you? On the theme of you're not in it alone. If you're at an institution, there are communicators who work at your institution who can help you. If you are at a nonprofit, you probably have allies in the community who can assist you. If you're at a company, same thing. Your coworkers might have a secret TikTok side hustle, and they can help you access these new streams of information. I wanted to give an example for some of my work. So this is Emerge. It's a project that I did with Globe Observer, a NASA project. They wanted to get people across Florida doing the mosquito habitat mapper protocol. And I was tasked with spreading the word. So we had access to the UF IFAS extension listserv. So all the different extension agents became great allies to us because they were able to spread the word to their communities. Every county has an extension office in Florida, all 67 counties. So not every extension agent participated in Emerge, but enough did that I think it made the difference. And because they know their community best, if we just give them a toolkit, they can translate it to that audience. SciStarter was also great for this. There are, I think, 20,000 SciStarter users in Florida alone. So we were able to send out emails to all of them and reach them with toolkits to engage in this mosquito habitat mapper project. Dream and Green was a great ally. They are, I've actually done some PDs for them where I've taught them about CitSci, our favorite app and website. But Dream and Green, they are just so plugged in to the teacher ecosystem in Florida. So if you want to reach K-12 teachers, Dream and Green is who you go to. So they became a partner on this. And then, of course, we just did the stereotypical press release. We wrote a press release and sent it to local news, and it got picked up by Lake Okeechobee News and others. So as you're thinking through what you're communicating, who you're communicating, and then this piece, how to communicate it, think about emails, listservs, traditional news outlets, trusted ambassadors who can help you. Those are all key components of science communication. All right, so step 5, implement your plan. So once you come up with the type of science that you're doing, who your audience is, what you're hoping to achieve, how you're going to do it, then you just have to do it. So this is an example from my dissertation. So my dissertation was, I wanted to see if we could create a new model for science communication about climate change. So I partnered with 5 different extension offices, one in Pensacola, so that's in the Panhandle in Florida. Then we went to Brevard, which is the Space Coast, Sarasota, which is the West Coast, Miami, which is South Florida, and then Monroe County, which is the Keys, which is as far south as you can get in the United States, the continental United States. And we had the same model of a webinar for each one, but every extension agent I worked with translated it to their local context. So we picked a climate hazard that was relevant to the audience we were trying to reach in that county. And we provided a localized call to action, either citizen science related or resilience related, just something tangible people could do. We found this was a really effective model. And I think what made this successful, and this is something I want you all to think about for your science communication, is we were very honest about the scope. So, this is a one-time event. We're giving you this call to action. If you want to do more, you can go to SciStarter or you can go elsewhere to plug into volunteering with your local extension office. But this is a one-time call to action event. So I think that's really key too, as you're communicating about science, or if you're communicating about a particular call to action, be honest about your scope and your involvement in it. But yeah, that was, and we called them digital field experiences because we did these webinars out in the field. So here I am on site in Key West. They wanted to talk about all the mitigation they do. So they have like electric buses in Key West and all sorts of fancy climate adaptations. So we talked about how members of how folks in Monroe County can plug into that. And then there's a picture. My parents were my camera people for all the programs. So that's my dad and I doing the stormwater program in Cape Canaveral on the Space Coast in Brevard County. So yeah, that was another example of science communication. We scoped it, we found our partners, we promoted it, we had our audiences, and we had clear calls to action. So the final step is just reflecting as you go out into the world and think about your next steps, think about what you want to accomplish. I want to share one last example because I think science communication can be iterative and you can continue to learn as you go. So this year with CitSci, we had the Leave No Trash University Challenge. So we had all these different schools involved. So and 7 universities in Nigeria. So, over 20 schools involved in the Leave No Trash University Challenge, where we asked them to go pick up trash in their communities, safely dispose of it, and document what they picked up via CitSci's app or website. And because of that, we were able to do some real sustainability research with our partners, Leave No Trace. We were able to show that, over 2,000 gallons of trash were picked up. And we also had some surprises, right? We had a lot of international engagement, and we were able to learn from them and see the different ways they use the form. Like trash that they found in Nigeria was super different than trash that was found at Arizona State University. So we were able to learn as we went. And based on their feedback, we can revise the form for next year and put different types of trash in there. And try one thing that the Unique Nappers did, which I thought was interesting. These were the 7 universities in Nigeria, is they wanted it to be a competition. They wanted to see who was able to pick up the most. So if that incentivizes participants, great. Maybe that's something we can build in next year's protocol. But I think with science communication, as we've talked about, it's something that it's a muscle that you build. You're not in it alone, and you can also iterate. You can learn as you go and continue to pivot and change. So quick takeaways, if you take nothing else away from today, before we end with a little bit of a brainstorm all together, and I think the worksheet might be a useful way for you to operationalize your own science communication, but if you take nothing else away, know your goals, so know what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to get people to do citizen science? Are you trying to get people to marvel at your fantastic research result? Are you trying to get people to donate so you can keep on doing your science? Just know what your goals are. Know your audience. So are you trying to reach people across the state of Colorado? Are you trying to get students involved in something? Are you trying to reach a particular decision maker because they read a particular newspaper? And this is something that people do that. I know it sounds crazy, but teams I've been on, they might try to get a press release in one particular paper because they know the person who needs to see it reads that paper. Whatever it is, just know who your audience is, know who you're trying to reach, know who you're trying to learn from. And always end with a call to action. I think when you have people's attention, that's a real gift, and you always want to give them something to do. So to take my own advice, if you do nothing else, create a CitSci account. That's a good tangible call to action so we can stay in touch with you. But otherwise, my email's up here. Phone number, I'm always happy to chat on the phone with anybody in person or online as you brainstorm your own science communication journey. The worksheet that people have in person and also people have online can be found via this URL. And I thought we could end with a little bit of a dialogue and think through how we want to approach science communication. Yeah.
People online know that I've given them more control over their mind.
Okay, and internet people, you can now unmute and say whatever you'd like as well. So yeah, I'm curious for the audience online and in person, are there any like science communication missions that you see yourself embarking on soon? Like, is there something you're trying to message out? Or is there something you want feedback on? Are you trying to do more stakeholder engagement? I'm super curious about where everybody's at.
Hi, Caroline. This is Ashmita again.
Yeah.
So, I am taking this course in this semester, which is presenting biology, which I'm finding really interesting because I don't know if you would agree with it, but what they're teaching is they're teaching that if you are a good storyteller and can hook your audience and can communicate science in that way, then the people would get more involved to the kind of science that you're doing, no matter how complicated it is.
So I'm of two minds about that. I think storytelling is important, but I think sometimes it can put too much pressure on scientists and then they never start because it's not like, I don't think coming up with a compelling hook is a skill that everybody has, right? Or the character piece or being able to craft a narrative. So I think storytelling is great. Like there's nothing bad about telling a story, but I would encourage you all to be a little bit more vulnerable and just start by asking questions. Like you don't have to feel the pressure to like perform for people and make them entertained when you're
Right.
first learning how science communicate about science. You can just say, what are you interested in? I do plant pathology. Have you ever heard of that before? Like you can just start off by asking questions. I think like just
Right.
start the
Right. I get you.
dialogue before putting pressure on yourself to tell a story.
Yeah. Thanks, Carolyn.
Yeah, Greg, you have something?
Yeah, I have two things. Back to the point about the weather.
Yeah.
Framing the communication in languages and ways and approaches that are understanding.
Mhm.
We were working with ranchers in the Thunder Basin area of east central Wyoming.
Mhm.
And, if you look at what's written in a proposal and if you look what's actually emerges as relevant and meaningful words on paper for ranchers, is, the proposal was studying grassland dynamics, grassland biomass, ebbs and flows of that, and predictors of that with respect to like prairie dog populations and ebbing and flowing prairie dog populations because they wipe out with plague and then they boom and they bust. And so that, the science was to try to understand predictors of grassland biomass. It's very complex systems. What emerged was livestock weight gain. So to weather and climate, if you think about just the different ways of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, assessing what factors are affecting livestock weight gain, the producer, that's what the producer's concerned about, right? So they became bought in.
Yeah.
The ARS system, the agricultural research stations, and the researchers at USDA and the lab and elsewhere, they kind of drank the Kool-Aid because they understood that the why was to help them on their bottom line.
Yeah.
And so I think that really matters as to how you talk about things. And then lastly, I think there's something powerful, to the storytelling comment. Thanks to Asmita about the comment. And maybe you get the help from the experts on how to do this, but there's nothing like, the hook is really a title at the end of the day, and the power of a title matters. So if you're studying the trying to advance scientific understanding of the diet of seagulls.
Gulls eating stuff.
The title that went viral, Gulls Eating Stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So that's literally what they call their project, right? It's Gulls Eating Stuff. And so they didn't say we're trying to understand the diet of seagulls.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it just matters these sorts of word choices.
Yeah.
So find the expert to help with the word choice.
Yeah. So for those online who might not have heard, Greg was talking about communicating the why, because they were able to get buy-in on a project with ranchers because ranchers understood that the researchers were trying to help increase their bottom line, actually trying to help them. So the why is really key. And then also the branding piece. Greg brought up there's a citizen science project on CitSci called Gulls Eating Stuff that has gone very viral and done very well because it has a great name. A project called The Dietary Preferences of Seagulls probably wouldn't have been as popular. So yes, I think learning how to speak people's language is really key. I think also you can be, for those who are just starting and might be nervous, you can be vulnerable about that. I know with me, with the example I had about the resource map, Henrietta, Sharon, and I, we come from different worlds, but I told them up front, like, hey, I'm so honored to work with you. If I say anything that you don't think will make sense to the people we're trying to serve, let me know. Like, you're the experts in this community. Just educate me and help me like refine my message better. So I think you can be vulnerable with the people you're working with if you're trying to engage a community that might have mistrust of science or might not have ever worked on this type of project before. You can just ask them to like help you as true collaborators. I think coming at science communication from a place of true collaboration and friendship with the public is a great way to do it. Oh, Anika, you're welcome to share if you'd like. Oh, she says, currently my lab is working on a project to engage municipal water managers to develop a water quality forecasting tool using machine learning modeling. So we need to understand the water quality parameters that are most important, their decision-making workflow, and what would be most helpful to them in the tool. That's awesome. Yeah, so you have like a clear, so you know what you're doing, so you have the type of science, right? You know who your audience and stakeholders are, so that's huge. You know what you want to communicate with them about. So now you just have to get to the how. That's step 4, right? So I would probably just open it up with a conversation, maybe a listening session with like some sort of guide of even just bullet points of topics you want to get through. I would just start talking to them and start understanding what their priorities are. But yeah, a listening session or a focus group probably makes the most sense for Anika's case. But Anika, that's exciting. Very cool. Yay. Anybody else have any science communication goals, missions?
Okay, so I have one.
Yeah.
I never realized
Mhm.
right? And Unreal itself is many things.
Yeah.
Many types of science. So in a world where so much is going on, as a science communicator, how do you think about how to kind of break through the noise, even within your own institution? Like,
Mhm.
we get drowned in stories every day from cool stuff happening at CSU.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And also a challenge when you're trying to tell your own story. So
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. The other day, I asked an extension agent friend, like, because the trees in my backyard keep dying. So I was like, why is this happening? And he's like, well, you need to plant the right tree in the right place. So I think that's true for science communication as well. It's pick the right venue for the right message. So if you're trying to get people involved in a citizen science project, maybe use the SciStarter listserv, or CitSci is always here to help. If you're, we can put in the newsletter, things like that. If you're trying to share a novel research result, maybe you should go on the podcast circuit. I think podcasts are increasingly a really great place for science communication. One thing I found, having worked with the public, quote unquote, is people like to feel smart. So that's what drives people to listen to science podcasts. So I think science podcasts would make sense. Or maybe you need to, if it's a super localized research result, maybe you need to be at the Fort Collins, community meeting and sharing it with the people who would benefit most. So I would say just the main thing is the right venue for the right message. Yeah. Oh, I'm not an expert, but I did a project on ecotoxicology. Oh, look at them. They're making friends. This is so great. That's the thing, right? Science communication. You need to lean on your allies, learn from each other, go back and forth, engage in dialogue, and then good things can come of it. I know we're nearing the end of our time together. Is there anything else that anybody wants to share or anything else on y'all's minds before we go?
Carolyn, really loved your talk. Sorry I could not be present in person. I'm not doing well today, but
Oh,
I'm looking forward to meet you sometime. And I mean, science communication is a honestly huge training and skill that one acquires. And I am just a mere beginner. So if I need any sort of suggestions, I'll reach out to you.